Navy Matters.
Hello and welcome back to History Repeats. I'm your host, Liam Carballal, and joining me again is Richard Acritelli. Richard, so we are now going back into part 2 of our discussion on the war in Ukraine. Maybe we could talk a little bit about how it started. Richard, I was not in the military. I'm not super versed on military tactic. Traditionally, though, when you want to launch an offensive against another country, you need a ratio, what was it, 3 to 1, 5 to 1?
Well, that's what they figured, that the Russians had 3 to 1 over Ukraine. Mm-hmm. All you hear is a massive Russian size, a Russian bear, right? Mm-hmm. Ukrainian forces were not that large at that point. Mm-hmm. Now you have like 900,000 in their army, and you have reservists, and the difference between the Ukrainians and the Russians today is that the Ukrainians have been fighting for a long time, but they're battle-hardened, they're battle-tested. Mm-hmm. The Russians have all these numbers, and the Russians themselves are throwing new bodies into the fighting with virtually no experience. Mm-hmm. So when you looked at this, how many years now? It's 3 years now,
3 and a half.
It's crazy. It seems like yesterday that this occurred, right? Mm-hmm. And what you're looking at was, I guess it was under President Biden, where they said to Zelensky, do you want to ride out of there? He goes, no, I want ammo. I'm staying put, right? Yep. Which is interesting because you look at Zelensky, who's that comedian, who was a character, the whole 9 yards.
He played the president of Ukraine on a comedy show and then got elected president of Ukraine.
Yeah, you got a modern day Ronald Reagan speaking Ukrainian.
Yeah.
You know, so it's amazing. So when the fighting began, the concern was that the Russians were going to attack, take the country over, execute the leadership, go after any troublemakers, and so on, right? I mean, they've taken over 20% of the country. You saw last year the Ukrainians took over that area, Kursk, which was a major embarrassment for the Russians. Yep. The Russians today is complete surprise, right? They're committing huge atrocities with taking the children, right? And you don't know the number of the kids that they're taking, and they're sending back to Russia for re-education, right? So they had all these things in mind to do to basically tame the Ukrainians who were seen as troublemakers, right? They were gonna keep them under their thumb. Well, the Russian, and we spoke about this a little bit within the first episode, it should have been like a 3 to 1, right? They go in with the same amount of numbers as the Ukrainians, and they attack within 6 different areas. So they split up their numbers. Now, the Russians have all these numbers, but the interesting thing is like their platoons, their companies, their battalions, their brigades, okay, their divisions weren't always up to full strength, all right? And they weren't up to full resources. So if you look at us, when we go to war against Saddam Hussein, you have Desert Shield and you have Desert Storm. Yep. Desert Shield was to show kind of the Iraqis that we were there, but we were in a holding pattern. And we end up sending over, 300,000 Americans on top of all the coalition forces itself there. All right, and it's several months. All right, we get more aircraft over there, more Navy, more soldiers, more of an understanding of what the attack is going to be eventually into southern Iraq and then into Kuwait itself there. The Russians do not do anything that resembles, the fighting that you see with Schwarzkopf, with this ironclad plan. You know, so what the Russians do is they attack, they show strength, they scare the Ukrainians, but the Ukrainians end up fighting. Okay, from the water, you have Ukrainian special forces that end up turning the tide on the Russians, and right away, the Russians, after a day or so, say, we can't do this. And then there's other points where that happens itself. Where the Russians go on the main road going towards Kyiv, you had Russian soldiers puncturing their gas tanks with screwdrivers. Now, I drove tractor trailers in the Army. I hauled ammunition, jet fuel, explosives, forklifts, all kinds of stuff. An army moves on its supply. An army moves on its communication, okay, on its logistics and so on, right? The Russians failed miserably at supply, communications, and logistics. Okay, I remember seeing those convoys, and they were in close proximity because they were running out of gas purposely. The Russian soldiers knew the closer we get to Kyiv, we're not coming out of this. We're not prepared for any of this here. So Putin has that devilish look, and you see him at the Olympics with the Chinese foreign, prime minister, head of the Communist Party, and so on there, right? But he doesn't count on Ukrainians fighting. And Ukrainians are tough people. They're very tough people. It's one of the most corrupt countries in the world. You have early on Russian officers making telephone calls with their cell phones
not
in
encrypted.
The field. Yeah, it's not good. They're getting targeted. They're getting picked off. You have Russians breaking into Ukrainian gas stations for food. You have Russian soldiers in Belarus that 2 days after an invasion, they're told that they're the reserves, that they're eventually going to go in there, and they have no idea why they're there. American soldiers go into Saudi Arabia during the first Gulf War. They knew exactly why they were there. They were training, they understood, and they got to the point where, like, all right, let's just get this over with and go home now. Okay, they were motivated to go against the Iraqis and liberate Kuwait and so on, right? The Russian soldiers don't have that motivation because everything was top secret and nobody knows anything. They're going to Ukraine. They're asking Ukrainians which way they have to go to in terms of their targets, because roads were either there that were not on the maps, or they had older maps where roads were no longer there. So for the Russians, it's crazy today. The Europeans, rightfully so, they have to be concerned about the Russians. But how the heck are the Russians going to take over some of these European countries, along with their coalition with NATO, where they're stuck in the mud in Ukraine? It's not, I don't believe it's going to happen in terms of non-nuclear use. And if they use a nuke, then the United States gets involved, because we will not stand by with that there. And we'll certainly show the Russians, say, listen, now you're fighting against it now, a different enemy. So.
One of the more interesting anecdotes I remember from especially the early part of the war, they didn't take, the Russians when they invaded, they did not take down the internet. And so you have like teenagers on their cell phones taking pictures of Russian troops moving through the village, like their village. The Ukrainian Air Force is like, there's just Russians in that area. Let's go bomb them.
Well, the interesting thing you mentioned about North Korea, right?
Yes.
There is no internet in North Korea.
No.
Right? They got nothing in North Korea.
No.
They're going to fight in Ukraine. They're finally getting like a taste of some sort of internet there. Those guys are looking at some wild things other than what their military stuff is there, So they're looking at pretty crazy pictures and videos online that they wouldn't have been privy to in North Korea. So
telling me our president didn't walk on the moon? What?
Yeah. So it's crazy, and they're seeing for themselves that they're coming from a propaganda laden, area. So it's a lot of this. I think a lot of this is going to be studied down the road, like in places like West Point and Air Force Academy and the Naval Academy, all our military academies, all of our components of the military has their own educational tools to advance their officers. Like you have for the military, for the Army, it would be like Command and General Staff and the Army War College. It's the same for Air Force and Navy. It's the advanced education. They're going to be looking at and studying what the Ukrainians did well, what the Russians did well to a lesser degree, but they're going to see what some of their failures in leadership were. Okay, and we always want to go the opposite in terms of strengths, So, but it's I just don't know what peace is going to look like, and what's happening now is we're starting to threaten China and India, Iran, and some of these countries that have been client states of the Russians itself, especially with their oil. So it's pretty amazing that this is going on, you know. But I have some statistics here,
Yeah.
okay, of
Losses, battlefield.
of some of the resources that the Russians have. Their manpower is 69 million people. Okay, Ukrainians is 18 million. Active soldiers is 1.3 million. Ukrainians have 900,000. The reserve forces for the Russians are 2 million, and you better believe that those reserve forces don't want anything to do with the fighting in Ukraine there.
Yep.
For the Ukrainians is 1.2 million people itself there. Paramilitary units is 250,000. So these are units that are tied to the military with some military training. And you have 100,000 for Ukrainians. All right, so this is for the Air Force. The total aircraft that the Russians have is 4,292. Ukrainians have 324, but a lot of that aircraft end up coming from us.
Yeah.
Okay, and coming from, I believe the British and the Germans had sent them over some planes as well. Helicopters, you have 1,650 for the Russians, 136 for the Ukrainians. So this is definitely David versus Goliath there.
Yeah.
Fighters, you have 833. You got 70 for the Ukrainians. Attack helicopters, you have 557 for the Russians, 39 for the Ukrainians. Okay, so and then the trainer aircraft. Okay, all the Ukrainians have is 24 aircraft to train their pilots. There are some Americans who have retired who've actually flown sorties over there.
Really?
Like you have American Army and Marines that have gone over there too. And, you know, it's a tough spot, especially if they get taken, as prisoners, you know.
Russia, though, it's a massive country, and it borders everyone from Finland in the west to North Korea in the east. I'm assuming that as Russia has to peel more and more resources off other fronts, it might weaken them. Well, obviously it already has, since they just lost Syria last winter. But let's say, I don't know, China decides they want Vladivostok back, that they lost in the 1860s. Is this going to, in the long run, the longer we wait, just doom them?
Well, 1 out of 3 rubles that the Russians are spending is for the war.
Yeah.
They have a wartime economy. A lot of their spending is going right to their military.
Yeah.
The Russians are in a bad way economically, very bad way.
Yes.
We've been in a constant state of war over the last 20 years because of 9/11, of which we had to do.
Yeah.
I mean, we're here in Glen Cove. It's not too far away, Manhattan, where we could see the smoke from the city from here.
I remember.
So we had to do that, right? But constant warfare only economically will hurt great countries.
Yeah.
Okay? Look at England.
Spanish Empire.
Right? Look at the British, right? 1945, they helped win World War II, especially in Europe, right? By 1946, they had to shed their colonies.
Yeah.
All right? The Russians are in a bad, bad way. Okay? And Russian people, after the Cold War came to an end, what did they want? McDonald's, Burger King, Dunkin' Donuts, Levi's, VCRs, Mr. Coffee, all this stuff. Now, over the last 3 years, all these Western companies pull out. Like you said before, they're pariahs on the global stage.
Yep.
They're forced to get North Korean soldiers, use Iranian drones. Okay, the Chinese can't be happy that one of their key allies looks like like a false power.
Yeah.
And when you look at that territory, I don't know, because it's such modern times. I think what they have to be concerned about is internally.
Yeah.
Is if that government's going to be there over the next couple of years, because anything can happen. Yeah. There's a lot of pressure on Putin, and he doesn't look like that he's going to pull out of this anytime soon. He's got to get some gains to show that this was worth it. And I listened to something where he's got all these soldiers that are coming home, and you spoke about World War One. Mm-hmm. How many of those Russian soldiers joined the Bolsheviks?
Yeah, right.
Because they basically said, we went to the front without any weapons, without any food. The leadership was terrible. Okay? The Germans who went up against us murdered us on the front.
Yeah.
We had no idea what we were doing.
Yeah.
Okay? When you're looking at the Ukrainians, because of their sheer size, you know, they're going to be behind the 8 ball a little bit. But the Ukrainians have really hammered the Russians with severe casualties. You're looking at them, they're thinking 1 million Russians have been killed in this war. How many wounded are walking around in major cities and towns where people are looking at them and shaking their head and said, this should have never happened to you. Yeah. You know, this should have never, like I'm wearing a Wounded Warrior shirt. My VFW posts, we're on our 18th year of doing a Wounded Warrior golf outing, right? Yeah. We've raised over, I think it's $400,000 for the Wounded Warriors. The technology for the soldiers today have gotten better in this country. All right, it took a lot of wounded to come home, but the country will invest in it. Are the Russians doing that for their own people there? That's the thing. You know, I mean,
you're spending all the money on the soldiers being sent over there. They're not going to the veterans.
Well, that's the thing is there going to be a disheartened source of the population that could do, again, what is the name of your show?
History repeats.
History repeats, right? Can that happen again?
Yeah.
You know, in these modern times where you have Russian soldiers that said, we went to the front lines. We were sold a bill of goods. The Ukrainians did not roll over. That's what they expected in the first couple of days, right? We end up going there. Our weapons, we don't know how to use our weapons the right way. Ukrainians were not pulling out of the trenches. Okay, their people fought us tooth and nail, and we took massive casualties. You had this summer offensive going on, okay? So they net some results. It's not going to be enough, okay, to make up for the losses that they're taking. As we're speaking now, they're taking losses. Yeah. Tomorrow, when you wake up and you go to work, there's going to be losses. It's a disaster for the Russians. Yeah. The Ukrainians are fighting a defensive war. They're fighting for their homeland. Yeah. They see the Russians as not only a threat now, but down the road. Yeah. Okay? And what you're looking at, okay, with the Russians themselves, they got to keep hammering away and away. And, you know, their leadership is not proved up to the task of doing this on the battlefield.
And what ones are dead. So
right, they're gone. And, you know, you're looking at, you know, the Ukrainians have become very creative with attacking the Russians. Yeah. They had that, what was it, last month, they attacked into Siberia, right? They truckload, you know, armaments and, you know, the drones and stuff like that. Yeah. They went after them. What does it show them? That you have military bases that are thousands of miles away. Yeah. Okay.
They can hit anyone.
They're not safe.
Yeah.
And we're going to hit them. These are planes that are brand new planes, or they're being rebuilt, or you know, they're taken out and okay, they're being retooled, or whatever you want to call it, right? And we could destroy this stuff here. Yeah. You know, and I think the Ukrainians are going to start showing the Russian people that we're going to bring the war more back to you, and we're going to see how you like this now. Yeah.
Not even necessarily just in Russia. I believe I was watching this video recently about Ukrainian special forces fighting Wagner in Africa. Yeah, a real world war.
You're seeing that, you know, the Russians are trying to show strength in other areas, but it's not enough, though. Yeah, you know, and the Russians have not done themselves any help towards whatever their cause is in terms of the atrocities that they've committed. Yeah, like in Bucha, they lost that territory. Yeah, the Ukrainians, okay, they dig out these massive graves of people being tied and shot in the back of the head, like what your show is, right? History repeats itself. Yeah, the Katyn massacre. Yeah, right, where the Nazis unearthed this here, and they're saying this is what the Soviets are doing. Yeah, the Soviets blame it on the Nazis, but us and the British realized that The Soviets had done that to the Polish officers, to the professors, the musicians, the writers, the artists, and so on. Okay, so the Russians are just, they've gone in a direction. This is not modern thinking. No. They're raping women, they're killing civilians, you know, you got these massacre sites. You know, there's going to be hell to pay for this down the road. They're going to look, okay, look at Rwanda in the 1990s. Yeah. They were picking up those guys still. Yeah. Right? The Hutsis killing the Tutsis and so on. Mm-hmm. Okay, in Yugoslavia, Srebrenica, right? They killed, what, 15,000 people there. Yeah. All right, it's crazy. And that's in Europe, you know? Mm-hmm. People have a long memory for this here. Mm-hmm. Okay? You have World War II veterans that are now, what, 90, 95, 100 years old? Well, you have German who fought, you know, and they committed atrocities, and they're still locating these guys, SS even guards. Though SS guards and stuff. Who was it? The banker of Auschwitz, right? Yeah. Years ago. So people have long memories for this. They're not always going to look the other way. Mm. And I think down the road, you're going to see, okay, that there will be trials on what these people had done. Yeah. Okay. And who knows what investigations, what leadership they already know about. Yeah. Okay, it's not like they're just going to wait until after this war is done. They're already compiling lists, you know, to nab some of these people down the road. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's a bit exhausting sometimes, constantly living through history. You know. Well, we're seeing it unfold. We're seeing it unfold right here. I mean, it's something that the Russians thought that they could do this during modern times in their part of Europe. Yeah. Okay, against a country who told them, we will fight and defend ourselves. Mm-hmm. Remember, was it 2014 when the little green men went into the Crimea? Yeah. President Obama said, we could see what you're doing. Yeah. Right? And then they end up annexing, and then they go into the Donbass and all these different regions, right, that are in what? The eastern part of the Ukraine. Mm-hmm. Okay? Trump, before he leaves in his first term, had given them some weapons. Yeah. And then President Biden has given, like, those, you know, those anti-tank weapons, the javelins itself there. Yeah. And then fighter planes and tanks and all this new stuff. And then Trump, you're seeing that, all right, I'm going to take a step back. Mm-hmm. The European allies were upset, right? Mm-hmm. But he puts pressure on them to start investing more in their own defenses. And now what you're looking at, okay, is that, you know, we're going to get more weapons over there. Mm-hmm. The core structure is just different now. Yeah. Okay, and the Europeans are now saying we're willing to pay more. Mm-hmm. Okay, and it's, I think Putin he's done himself in. Yeah. It's just a matter of when. It really is. He's not a young man. This was really botched, what he did. And he's already known as a dictator, authoritarian leader. This is what he's going to go down in. It wasn't like he was going down for so many glorious things, but he really opened up something that his country can't get out of right now. And that's very dangerous. Pandora's box. Pandora's box. You look at President Bush, okay, in terms of... Break it, you own it. He was supposed to be an economic-minded president, and then 9/11 happens. Mm-hmm. I mean, we had two major wars going on in Iraq and Afghanistan. For a while there, it would look like there was no clear way. Yeah. You know? But you got to remember, those officers that are there are now the future colonels and generals and so on, right? They're very experienced leaders with a government that was trying to fully support them in the field. Yeah. Okay, the Russian government can't say that. No. They can't say. They're just trying to keep the Ukrainians at arm's length, and it's an embarrassment for them. It really is. It's a sheer embarrassment for them. Yeah. So, all right. Any final thoughts, Rich? Or? I don't know. What do you think comes out of this here? It's hard to predict the future. You mentioned the Rwanda and how people are still getting arrested. I was thinking about the conflict that's going on in Sudan right now. There's a civil war going on between the former death squads that ran
into Darfur back in 2000s, and now there's a civil war in the country. So you have the government of Sudan paying for the mistakes of its past, and I see a very similar situation to that.
It's a scary situation, and we're watching this unfold every day.
Yeah.
And
all right. Well, Rich, this was very
thank you, Liam. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And always good speaking with you.
All right. My name is Liam Carballal. This has been History Repeats on HMTV. Stay tuned until next time.